tell us about your experience working on a cruise ship.
Well, the cruise ship, as all the employees, we kind of joke, we called it a floating prison because you're essentially there. You really, I mean, most employees very rarely get off the cruise ship just because you're there to work. You're not there to have fun, and you don't have days off. So,
but they tell you it's like the funnest job there is.
Well, they have to convince you that it's fun to get people to sign up. Because, of course, it's not. But a pretty standard contract is 10 months, so which essentially means you're going to work 300 days in a row.
Right.
And for instance, I had a 6-month contract, so I worked about 180 days in a row at 6 o'clock in the morning. And depending on the day, that could be anywhere from an 8-hour to a 16-hour shift. And with no days off, so... right after work, a lot of days you might have to either take a nap or go to sleep because you're so tired, especially if it's a longer shift, like 14, 16 hours. Most of the coworkers I had worked over 100-hour weeks, 110, 115 hours was pretty typical. And because you live on the ship, your personal kind of time is also tied to your work time. So if you get written up for, say, failing a room inspection, which we had 3 room inspections a week, that would affect your professional time. So, like, let's say you got written up for having a banana in the room, then that means that you wouldn't get a promotion if you signed up for another contract. That one write-up would prevent you from getting a promotion on your next contract.
That's interesting. So, how does one get written up for a banana? What is that?
Well, we weren't allowed to have prepared food in the room, but there was this big sign in the crew lounge that had all the acceptable foods you could have, and on the sign was a banana. And I had one of my coworkers got written up for having prepared food, and they asked about the write up, and they're like, "Yeah, you had a banana in your room," and they're like, "How is that prepared food?" And their response was, "Well, you have to peel it." And I was like, "Well, why do you have a banana on the picture in the crew cafeteria about acceptable foods you can have?" Like, "Oh, that was an oversight." I had another coworker that got written up for filling their water bottle out of the water fountain. They said that was a contamination issue, so that was a write-up. And if you get 3 write-ups, you get fired and you get dropped off at whatever port you're in. So if you're on a ship that, maybe you're on a different island, or you're on a ship that is going around the world, and you are from Indonesia or the Philippines, which is where the majority of the staff is from, the crew is from, and you say you're in the Bahamas, and you'll get dropped off on that island, and then you got to get back to your home country on your own dime.
That seems so heartless. So they would just do random checks without telling you. They can just go into your room.
Yeah, they do.
So you barely have any privacy. They
Right.
write you up for really dumb rules. And then if you have 3 strikes, basically you get dropped off and you have to get yourself home.
Well, what happens is you have peak season, so you need the entire workforce, right? Then all of a sudden after peak season, you have all these extra employees, so they're just trying to get rid of employees to cut payroll, so they're just looking for reasons to get rid of people. And then you're also, because you're in international waters, you don't really have the worker protections that you'd have, or they're lax because the ship will run under like a BVI or some other country that has really loose regulations or non-existent. And so, for instance, like we had to do 2 to 3 trainings a week for emergency drills. So everyone on the ship is part of like the fire team or part of some type of life raft team, lifeboat team, things like that.
They teach you how to save the people in case anything happens, basically.
Well, they're drills like if you need to abandon ship, you're able to lower the dinghies and get the boats inflated, get the tenders down, things like that. So we'd have 2 to 3 trainings a week, and those trainings are not paid for. Like, you're not getting compensated. Right.
Wow.
So if they happen to be in your shift, if they coincide with the hours that you're working, then you will get your whatever hourly rate you're on. But if they're outside of your work hours, you're not able to get compensated. And unfortunately for me, I worked fairly early, and a lot of these were like later on in the day, so I was never paid for them. And then if you don't show up to them, then you get written up.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like you're kind of in this catch-22 where it's like if you want to skip it, you're not getting paid for it anyways, but then it's a violation. And then of course said if you skip it 3 times, that could be, you'd be fired, or if you get written up a couple times, I said if you want to come back on another contract, then you won't be able to get a promotion. So you're just going to be at the same kind of level that you were the first time around.
You know, how do these cruises make really money? I know it's like it takes a lot to operate a cruise, right? Gas alone, everything's kind of rising, whatever. But they still, you can get on a 5-day cruise for like $600 all included, you know. So their prices are really cheap. Their ticket prices are really cheap, but yet they want to squeeze the workers. Like, it's pretty absurd.
Well, I mean,
how are they making money?
I mean, you don't find too many Westerners that work on these ships because most Westerners just won't put up with these conditions, right? But that's why most of the staff is from the Philippines or from Indonesia. Right. I mean,
Oh man, everyone seems to exploit the Filipinos, man. What is up with that?
I mean, when I was on the ship, I worked in the provisions and in the art gallery, and in the provisions, I was located right next to the food prep station, and it was almost everyone was from the Indonesia, the Philippines, like a lot of the other, you know, parts of the ship. But I would have conversations with these people, and they actually enjoyed it because, you know, for them the wages were higher than what they would have back home.
Right.
A lot of them were you know, kind of lonely or missing their family, because you might have one Filipino guy or one Indonesian guy supporting not only his family, but maybe his wife's family back home as well.
Right. The aunts and uncles.
Right. So they were like, well, it's better work than what we'd have back home. And so they really didn't, I wouldn't say that they hated it. I wouldn't say they necessarily liked it, but for them, it was maybe the best alternative that they have. A lot of the Westerners, you know, there were certain positions they would fill with Westerners, but those people generally didn't like it, or maybe do one contract for the experience, where you'd see people from other countries, more developing countries, that might be on their 10th, 12th year of doing it.
Yeah, that's how they do it, because someone out there is willing to take that job. And so as long as someone out there is willing to take the job, they can keep doing it. And I guess, like, you know, they get you into the cruise ship so you can spend money on either the booze or the gambling or whatever. Well,
and the ship makes a lot of their money on the casino, the gambling. I mean,
yeah, it's a floating casino for the most part. It's the house always wins.
Right. I mean, a manager that I would talk to, that's how he described the cruise ship. I mean, the employees would describe the cruise ship as a floating prison, and the managers would describe it as a floating casino. Right. And that's also the reason why they like to have sea days, right? Yeah. Where that way you don't go to a port, because if you go to a port and you get off the ship, the cruise ship's not making money.
Yeah, but if you're out and about spending your money outside,
right? But if you're on the ship, then people are gambling, people are buying alcohol, and so the ship's making money. I forget the exact number, but I think he said something like 90% of the profit was made from the casino and alcohol.
All right, because the food's getting cheaper and cheaper. In the cruise ships as well. Like, they're not really bringing quality foods in these cruise ships too. And yeah, I'm sure they make a ton of money on casinos. I'm sure the house is constantly winning. But I think if you're traveling in a cruise ship, it is a neat way to kind of hop around, like in the Caribbean or whatever. And it's neat to be out at sea. You know, it's a neat experience. Tip your servers really well, have a gambling budget maybe, and, you know, go outside and see it. I think that's the way to experience a cruise. I mean,
I've never been on a cruise ship in terms of as a passenger. I've only been on as an employee. I really wouldn't know.
I've never been on a cruise.
Yeah, I mean, after my experience, I was like, well, I'll never really do a cruise ship again, even as a passenger. I mean, maybe I'll change my mind when I'm older, but that experience, I didn't want to support the industry, so I've never been on a cruise ship. So, with the exception of my 6 month contract, and I figure 6 months out at sea is good for me.